Star Trek the Motion Picture was released in 1979. The film at the time was met with mixed reviews. However, contemporary reviews are a lot more favorable, especially of the director's cut, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. I was really impressed by the director's cut. It wasn't like the Donner cut of Superman 2, where I thought some things were improved and some things got worse.
General, haven't you ever heard of freedom of the press?
Everything was either the same quality or an improvement, even down to the small things. In the original, we get a shot of Kirk's shuttle pod heading to Starfleet headquarters. We can barely see it in the background. We then cut to a shot of the Starfleet insignia on the floor with no one walking over it. But the next shot, which is a wide of the bustling headquarters, people are walking over the Starfleet insignia, which doesn't match the previous shot at all. In the director's cut, however, we follow Kirk's shuttle the entire time, which builds tension about who could be in the shuttle pod, and we can clearly see Starfleet headquarters as the shuttle moves towards it. And this time there's no close-up of the Starfleet insignia that contradicts the shot afterward. So overall, I thought the film was good. It does have its issues. There's some structural problems, awkward dialogue, and a slow pace that doesn't fully pay off. But there's a lot more to like than to dislike, specifically in some of the character arcs for this film. Kirk's arc of trying to hold on to the past is decently done. Both Decker and Kirk have legitimate reasons for why they would be the better choice as captain. Kirk for his experience, and Decker because he knows more about the ship's operations. Both sides are well displayed. Kirk shows off his experience when he tricks V'ger into removing its spherical energy bolts from orbit. Decker's side is shown during the wormhole scene. During the wormhole situation, Kirk is about to fire phasers to destroy the wormhole. Decker, knowing that the phasers would be channeled through the faulty warp engine, which could destroy the ship, uses photon torpedoes instead, reducing the risk and getting them out of the wormhole. This leads to a scene in which Bones, Kirk, and Decker argue. Bones' realization that Kirk has an obsession with getting his command back is excellent and clear character work, backed up by Kirk's earlier actions when he goes over Decker's head and steals his command.
And I intend to keep her? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. It's an obsession. An obsession that can blind you to far more immediate and critical responsibilities.
So both sides have decent reasons for trying to be in command, making for, in theory, a great conflict. In theory, because there are some issues here. For one, Bones tells Kirk that he's actually the one competing, implying that Decker isn't, which makes no sense given that he just saw Decker mouthing off to Kirk.
I'm sorry if I embarrassed you.
You saved the ship.
I'm aware of that, sir.
Stop competing with me, Decker.
Granted, this is just one line. There are bigger issues with the arc. Specifically, the subplot of Decker versus Kirk is just left dangling when Decker leaves with Ilia. There's no real plot payoff. In fact, the entire conflict could have been left out of the film. It wouldn't have changed the plot. There's another issue as well. Kirk has no part in solving his own arc. It's something that would have happened with or without him coming onto the V'ger Control Center, because Decker's decision to leave with Ilia, which gives Kirk the ability to become captain again, that decision has nothing to do with Kirk at all. There are some more issues with the Decker versus Kirk conflict, specifically the wormhole scene. The wormhole scene by itself is fine, however that's kind of its issue. It is by itself in the film. While it does have a payoff in the Decker versus Kirk subplot, that subplot goes nowhere, and the wormhole, while being a great example of Decker's side of the argument, has no involvement with the V'ger storyline. Compare this to Kirk, who shows his side of the argument with how he deals with V'ger, leading to him saving Earth. Kirk's side of the argument actually dovetails quite nicely with the V'ger storyline, while the writers don't put in the same effort for the wormhole scene. On the flip side, Spock's arc of rejecting the Kolinahr was great. The arc begins with Spock about to complete the Kolinahr discipline, which is the purging of all emotions, and just as he is about to achieve it, he senses an entity in space that intrigues him. Spock leaves Vulcan, abandoning the Kolinahr to join the Enterprise to find and communicate with V'ger. Once Bones and Kirk learn about Spock's motives, Bones questions whether Spock's loyalty is to the ship or to himself. Bones is eventually confirmed in his suspicions when Spock steals his spacesuit and jets off towards V'ger. Having Spock have his own reasons that could conflict with the crew is a dangerous thing to do as a writer, as the writer could fall into the temptation of trying to create conflict that doesn't align with the character's values. However, this is actually handled really well in the motion picture, as Spock, in trying to mind meld with V'ger and learn more about it, serves his own interests, while also gathering information for the crew. So he's still acting in character, but acting on his own motivation. Another thing that's so well done about his arc is Spock's realization that he doesn't want to be completely logical like V'ger. Spock realizes how cold and empty V'ger is, and realizes that if he finishes the Kolnar, he'll become empty inside just like V'ger. It's an excellent reason for his character to reject the Kolnar discipline. And the subplot culminates really well in this fantastic scene where Spock starts crying and says he empathizes with V'ger. It's easily the best arc of the film and a standout piece of character writing. Decker and Ilia have a pretty interesting arc together, having had a past romance where Decker left abruptly. The scenes with him and the probe version of Ilia are economical in their storytelling, as we learn more about their past relationship through Decker's attempts to trigger Ilia's human side. They eventually go to V'ger, and Decker sacrifices himself to save Earth. He does this to be with Ilia, and to give the machine human qualities so that it can transcend and decide its own purpose through human weakness. For the most part, the story of Decker and Ilia is really great. The only issue is they haven't spent as much time developing it as they probably should have. In fact, the only scene we really get together of them, or the only two scenes, is one in a corridor where they recount their past relationship, and the scene that I stated earlier with Decker and the probe version of Ilia, where we're learning more about their relationship through Decker trying to show her past things that they did. So, while it makes sense for Decker to sacrifice himself to be with Ilia, it would have been better and more emotional if they had spent more time developing their relationship. One of my favorite aspects of the film is V'ger's story as a lost NASA probe. Basically, V'ger is actually the lost NASA probe Voyager 6, which was sent to retrieve information from other parts of the galaxy and return it to Earth. However, it was lost in a black hole. There are some really good themes that Voyager 6's story brings to viewers, such as self-purpose, logic, and being out of step in the present. The Voyager 6 probe reflects Kirk and Spock through some of these themes. With Kirk, it's because he's also out of step with the modern world, as shown by his lack of knowledge of the Enterprise. And with Spock, it's because they both are firmly logical beings who need the human element to become whole. There is one funny thing about the Voyager 6 probe. If the Voyager 6 probe had basic programming as they say, how was the name Voyager 6 not in any of the programming? And how did it not realize its true name once it became sentient? Another thing, well, I'm not the first person to say this, the transporter accident was entirely avoidable. Specifically in how Rand had to act like an idiot for it to happen by not turning off the transporter. In the film, she doesn't turn off the transporter, but you can still transport somebody without needing a transporter room on the other side, as we see in all the other shows where they transport somebody down to a planet. Now, granted, the other side of the transporter wasn't working so well, but then you have to ask, why would you transport in the first place? They're obviously in a rush, but both sides know their transporter isn't working well. And as we see with Kirk, they have no issue using a shuttle pod. Even though the film is flawed, I wish they actually stuck with this direction of a more intellectual sci-fi film with the movies, where each character has more subtle character arcs, and the movies were a lot more intellectual than emotional. I find that stuff to be way more intriguing and way more interesting. I think Kirk, Bones, and Spock and Decker having to decide over creating a new entity and deciding how they would give it new purpose and combining humans with machines is much more intellectually stimulating than the Wrath of Khan's revenge arc. That's honestly the more interesting way to go with this series, but obviously the film didn't do that well, so overall I'm a bit mixed on the motion picture. I like everything in concept. I didn't always like the execution, but there's some good character work here and really interesting sci-fi ideas in this. I'm going to give Star Trek the Motion Picture, the director's cut, a 6 out of 10, meaning that it's good.